Today, I'd like to talk about Japan and Takaichi and what is going on after she got elected as the PM of the LDP. And I just want to point out here, this is literally like, in our markets here, we say, oh, we think there's going to be 5 cuts to the Fed in the next 9 months or whatever, right? It's supposition. And she was elected, and we have some suppositions, and the market reacts to them. And so we want to start reading through the supposition to see what the market is saying. And so the number one thing is, remember, there's only 3 things that the governments and their central banks try to control. You control the economy, you control your currency, you can control your interest rates. You cannot do them all. Okay? It's impossible. You have to pick your poison. And so this is what we're going to look at today. So Tatashi comes in, and in her acceptance speech, she says, I'm going to use every lever for fiscal policy to drive the Japanese economy. 2, she said that the rise in interest rates was stupid. Remember something. In came Udida. The Japanese went out and got him, and his whole job, he was an academic, to come in and to normalize the interest rates in Japan. And as you know, he took them from negative up to 50 basis points, but there's still a lot of work to do there. And then Ishiba, who was the PM before Tatachi, he said no fiscal policy because we have to borrow 100% of the dollars or the yen to do that, and that does not make sense. Tatachi obviously does not believe that. She says, 1, we are going to drive fiscal policy, and 2, I'm going to drive down the interest rate. How do you drive down the interest rates? You buy the bonds. It's called QE. Okay. So, how has the market viewed these choices that Japan had in Takachi and what she's trying to say and do? So the first thing is the yen. And as you can see, we're around 147. Now we're 152 and a half. I think we're almost 153. So why is this happening? Well, if you do the fiscal policy, which means print more money, then the yen's going to be weaker because they think that's inflationary. And by the way, when your currency goes down, especially a lot, then you really have inflation. Just look at Turkey and Argentina, okay? And let's think about Argentina, what they did. Um, so, not to allow their currency to go down, they pegged it against the dollar. And so, thereby, they tried to work with the other two and peg it to the dollar, but now it's 30% overvalued, and we're bailing them out for $20 billion. So, we don't want to do that here. The only other thing I'll say about the currency is when it was at 145, Basent went to the Japanese and said, and remember, we did a video on this, you need to raise your interest rates to drive up the yen because we think the yen is 30% undervalued and we want you to revalue the yen up against the dollar. Obviously, that's not going to happen. And that's going to be a political issue between the United States and Japan. I'll guarantee you that. All right. Secondly, is the yield on the 30-year bond. And as you can see here, went up around 335, just less. And remember something, we did the video where Morgan Stanley said that if she is elected PM, they expect that the 30-year will go to 335. If someone else was elected, it would go to 3%. So she was elected and went up to 335. Now it's trading at 317. And you say, so why is that important? Well, here's the reason why. There was an auction yesterday. You can see the long-term 30-year bond was 333, 340, right? And it was up 45. And then they had the auction. And now Just Dario, who caught this, and thank you, Just Dario, he says, I guess the BOJ bought 100% of the 30-year auction, all right? And whether they did or not, I have no idea. It's his opinion, but I'll tell you why. Because go down here at the bottom, you see where the 30-year auction actually came in at 3.248, right? Now, we used to tell you the tail usually goes the other way. That if it's 1 to 2 on the tail above the existing price, that was okay. If it goes up to 4 or 5, it's not very good. If it goes above 5, it's terrible. But think about this. This is the opposite. We went down 11 bips on the bond. That means that the BOJ did buy a lot of the bonds. Is it 100%? I have no idea. But they bought a lot of them, or there's no way that this could actually happen physically. All right. And so today, even though it went to 324, now it's 317. So if you're doing the fiscal policy, which Japan people are supposing that they definitely are going to do, then it would be good for the stock market. And the stock market is up since Takaichi was elected and to an all-time high, which makes total sense. We're pumping the economy. It's going to be reflected in the stock market. So why do we care about Japan? Well, basically, the Western world is all facing these three choices. Look at France. Look at the UK. Look at Japan. Look at America. All of us have the exact same three things. Now, people are doing different things and have different positions, and some currencies are more powerful than others, and all this other stuff. But basically, we have this decision that governments are going to make. Are they going to support the physical, uh, or the fiscal economy, which is considered populism, all right? Or do they defend the bonds, right, and raise the interest rates, which obviously is not good for the populism, okay? And but that is a choice. And by the way, central banks have made those choices in the past, right? And what do they do with their bonds? If do they want the lower interest rate? And if they do want lower interest rates, what do you have to do? You have to do QE. All right. So what happens when you're in total debt, like the Japanese are? You have big fiscal policy. You print the bonds to support the fiscal policy. Then you're printing bonds to buy the bonds because the interest rates are going to go up. What are you going to do? Now, this is in today's Financial Times, but we did a video on this maybe 6 or 8, 9 months ago. And basically, the video was listen, the Western world with the sovereign debt. And it was right at the beginning, it was obvious, at least to me, that the long term sovereign debt was in crisis and it was moving up. And again, we only had three choices. And so, thereby, I felt that in the end, the Western world will punt. They will do the fiscal policy, they will let their currency go down, and more importantly, they will use QE. And so today's article is basically saying that whatever the governments, quote unquote, decide to do, this is what we're doing, okay? It's actually up to the market, the people, the election to allow you to do that. Look at France. They're not allowing them to do anything. They're in trouble. They know they're in trouble. But the three parties, they don't agree on anything. They're now going to have 6 ministers in 2 years. They're no closer to solving this problem. Are they going to need a real major crisis to actually come together and fix their problems? I don't know. It's interesting that almost everybody believes that if France fails, the country that's going to get hit is the UK. Is that true or not? We're going to find out. It's a narrative. Think about it. So here you have the entire Western world in debt with three choices to make. Which one do you think they're going to make? We know what our government wants to do. They want to force down the interest rates. And you actually saw Moran yesterday say, inflation, never heard of it. Not a problem. I'm very sanguine about it. Okay? So, whatever. They don't want to talk about inflation because that means that they would have to raise the interest rates. That means your currency would go up. They want the dollar to go down. Japan wants their currency to go down. Everyone wants their currencies to go down. And that means since of our debt level and the crisis in the long-term debt, we're going to have to buy bonds, all of us. And how does that work out on the long term? I don't know. Okay. We're seeing it play out in real time here, their currency. So, what am I looking for in the Japanese? Well, do they hit 160? If they hit 160 going up, which means down in value, then I think you're going to see the JGBs fall right through the floor. What do you think? Like and follow.